We know what you've come for, and now we're going to give it to you. You're listening to the No Such Thing podcast.
Hey guys, so this is Cornell from the No Such Thing podcast, and I'm speaking to Nomar Slevik and Mike Stevens. Nice to have you guys on the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
You can both hear me okay?
Can hear you great.
Okay. Now, it's hard to know where to start because there's so much to unpack here. I mean, I'm almost finished your book, Nomar. Because my Bigfoot expedition was supposed to happen today, and then it can't, because of the weather, it was called off. So I'm like, well, let's just do the interview this weekend if you guys are up for it. So I almost finished the book, but I think I've got enough examples of Mike's experiences to talk about. Not unless there's some big reveal at the end that I've missed, but let's Nomar, let's talk about how you guys met and how this all went down. I mean, how did you get in touch with Mike, and how did that all start? I mean, how did you guys get together?
Sure. It's been a few years now, and Mike used to be a part of a collective of like-minded individuals that did some work at a place called the KRI Center for Consciousness Studies. And in that building, they would sometimes have meetings for support groups. There would be meetings for empaths and for paranormal investigators. But they would also have people come in and give presentations or talks or Q&As, things like that. And Mike and I originally met with me inquiring about going down there to give a presentation, and that turned into a few presentations. And during that time frame, he and I became acquainted. We got to know each other a little bit, and eventually became friends. And during that time frame, I started to get little tidbits of information from Mike and from people that know Mike about some of his extraterrestrial encounters. And it was only a little bit here and there, and I'm always kind of like in the throes of a project. So I hear a cool story about Mike, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I should talk to him about that at some point. But I have 800 other things that I'm kind of focused on right now. And it got to a point, though, where Mike and I had this long conversation. It was like 2.5 years ago now. And he kind of laid out the totality of his encounters. It wasn't, the most in-depth, but, from reading what you have of the book, there's a lot there without all the detail. So just getting, a little bit deeper than surface level discussion on Mike's encounters, I was obviously immediately intrigued. I was captivated. I was jaw-dropped by a lot of it. And during that conversation, or towards the end of the conversation, I kind of brought on the question of, would you be interested in me writing your story? I don't know if that's verbatim by any means, but that's kind of where the catalyst for all of this came from. And Mike was very open to the idea. He had some questions and concerns, of course, because it's his own story and you want to make sure that's handled with care, which I completely understand. So we discussed some of that as well. But I think we both came away from the conversation like this could be the start of something pretty cool. And again, I alluded to the fact that I'm always kind of in the throes of a project. So when he and I talked about that, I was in the throes of a project and couldn't really dedicate any time to it at that point, which was fine with him and it was fine with me. And we eventually did get to it. So but that was like the start of it all.
Now the book in question is Granite Sky, A Disconcerted Journey Through the Unknown.
That's right.
And now, Mike, did you already have a website set up about this stuff, or did that come after the book itself?
I already had the website up. The group was ongoing before we started the book process. And, so the book title was, we played around with that like any author would. But we kind of decided that was a good play on, the group's organization. And what I do with the group is really because of what's happened to me. So it all kind of just worked out that way.
Okay. Now, Nomar, is this is a lifelong thing for you? Have you always been into making movies and writing books, or did this come after some kind of experience? I mean, is this a journey that you undertook to understand everything, or was there a catalyst? If you know what I mean.
I think I know what you mean. As far as creatively speaking, writing and making music and making little home videos and all that stuff, I've been doing that my entire life. I've always had a creative bone, which I think stems from my mother and a few of her siblings who were, musically inclined. And my mother is very creative. And so I've been doing that my entire life. Also, running parallel to that, I've been extremely interested in all things paranormal, not just UFOs, since a very young age. And as I grew older, those two passions certainly collided. And so when I started to put projects together and release them publicly in a professional manner, it was a kismet that those two had to be intertwined in some way. Some people have called me an exopolitical musician, which means I rap and sing about and write music about extraterrestrial type topics. Anytime I write something, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, there's always some sort of paranormal related message there. So yeah, the creative part has been there since childhood.
Well, now you're from Maine. I actually thought you were, for some reason, I thought you were on the West Coast. Maybe because of the, I don't know if you mentioned Bigfoot even, but I think that in that documentary, now the documentary is called Otherworldly Armor, right?
Otherworldly Amor. Amor meaning, okay. Amor meaning love.
No, that's on Amazon. I think that's where I found it.
It is, yeah.
And it seems that Maine, well, we'll get into that later, but it seems that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in Maine. I mean, I've heard a lot of, maybe because I'm close to it, but New Hampshire and Maine seem to be some kind of a hot spot, especially for UFO activity, going back to the Barney Hill. What's his wife's name again?
Betty
and Barney Hill. That was the first big alien abduction story in pop culture, right?
Yeah, and arguably created the archetype for the typical abduction scenario, if you will. Not that it's kind of weird to say a typical alien abduction scenario, but that's it was kind of, I wouldn't say these abduction scenarios are based on theirs, but it kind of leads credence to the fact that they were onto something, or that they were speaking the truth, because so many other people who have been abducted have so many similarities to the Betty and Barney Hill case. And when they came out, there was nothing that could really compare to it, But speaking to Maine and New Hampshire for hotspots, honestly, everywhere appears to be a hotspot. But New England, though, all of New England seems to be a hotspot for all sorts of strangeness. We're talking UFOs, we're talking strange cryptids, including Bigfoot, and an uncountable amount of hauntings throughout all of the homes throughout the area.
Now, could you just quickly, for our listeners that haven't heard of the Betty and Barney Hill story, could you just do a quick, synopsis, I guess, of it, and what happened to those guys? and what year?
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, Mike. Yeah.
The really quick story. There's a lot of depth to this story, so I mean, obviously go look it up for yourself. But real quick, they're an interracial couple, which is only important because of the time frame.
Right.
Because when you think of 1965, you wouldn't want to draw any extra attention to yourself. But they were coming back. They never really had a honeymoon, so they finally got the chance to kind of take a honeymoon, and they went up to Canada, Niagara Falls, Montreal, and that sort of thing. And as they were driving back through Route 3 in New Hampshire, Betty saw what she saw was maybe a shooting star or something at first, and then she saw it kind of move upward. So they pulled over into the Mount Cleveland picnic area to kind of stop and let the dog out, get a better look. And Barney looked, and he was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it was freaking him out, but Betty was really intrigued about this whole thing, and she was almost getting excited about it. So the dog does his thing. They travel on down the road. They noticed as it went over Cannon Mountain that it blocked out the light on top of the tower on Cannon Mountain. They got to the Old Man of the Mountain, which no longer stands, but is a huge New Hampshire icon.
It collapsed, right?
Yeah. It was a natural rock formation for people who aren't familiar with the area of the story. And we know that the profile of the old man's face was 48 feet. So when they saw this object next to the profile, they noted that it was double the size of the profile. So we're talking about like 100-foot object. So this is nothing small. They go a little bit farther down the road, a little bit more freaked out. They get to what's called Indian Head, which is another natural rock formation, but there's a hotel there, and they saw a light on. They're like, oh, maybe we should just pull over and spend the night. Things are getting weird. They're starting to get creeped out. And then they decide, now we just want to be home. We want to be in our own bed. So they push on. They get a little farther down the road, and this object that seems to have been trailing them in the sky, all of a sudden not lands, but drops in front of the road to the point where Barney has to stomp on the brakes. He stomps on the brakes. This object kind of hops to the side of the field to their left. And Barney gets out and he grabs his binoculars and he sees a row of windows in this object. And within this row of windows, he sees what he identifies as German soldiers. And Barney was in the service, so this all kind of makes sense if you follow anything in ufology and how the mind works. And he gets this overwhelming sense and feels that he's been communicated to that you will be captured. So he terrifiedly hops back in the car, starts to tear down the road. They hear a series of beeps, and then the next thing they know, they're 40 minutes. They hear another series of beeps and realize they're 40 minutes down the road. They try to stop off in Concord, New Hampshire to get a cup of coffee just to be around other people. They don't know anything's happened, but they feel really weird and just want to be around other people. Everything's closed, so they push on back home to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And they get home, and that's really what they remembered originally, in a very loose sense. There's a lot more details, but they didn't know there was an abduction. They didn't know there was missing time. All that came out after the point.
Right, and that's when they went through hypnosis, right? Because they were having nightmares.
Yeah, they didn't go to hypnosis. Nowadays, people would be like, oh, I think I was abducted by aliens or extraterrestrials, and go have a hypnosis session. Barney actually went for a medical condition. He was so stressed out and having ulcers, and like the stress level of what happened to him that he couldn't remember was literally killing him from the inside. And it actually did kill him in a very short period of time, unfortunately. But so he went as a medical thing. Like they thought maybe if you could remember what you can't remember to ease your mind, and the ulcers would settle and this and that. And then when they got this story, it wasn't what anybody was expecting. And then so they had him do his regressions, Betty do hers separately, and they put a thing on where like you won't remember what you talked about in regression until they could bring them all together and have it was kind of like a double blind hypnosis thing. And then once the story came out, history was kind of made.
Right, and we have tapes of this also. We have recordings of their regression, right?
Yes, and it's I mean, whether you believe in hypnosis or not, I know there's a dividing line. Some people do, some people don't. But when you hear Barney's regression and the pure terror he screams in, like it's, to me as a human being, it's undeniable. You can't fake that. You can't act that. Like whatever this man went through, it was real.
And it's terrifying to listen to.
Yeah, I've heard it myself now. Well, people can look it up for themselves. I mean, this is the gold standard of abductions. It's probably one of the first recorded ones that we have now. Now, Mike, do you want to get into your story a little bit about, I know there's a lot to unpack, but do you want to maybe unpack some of your experiences to, let us know how you became interested in this and you became aware of all of this stuff before you even met Nomar?
Yeah, so for me, this started at a very young age. After we've dug through everything, there's some indication that it could have started in infancy, but my first standing memory of anything like this happening, I was about 3.5 years old. We were at my grandmother's house in Southampton, New Hampshire. There was some type of family function going on because aunts, uncles, cousins, and all that sort of thing were there. And the way my grandmother's house was set up, you'd come in through the kitchen, and then off the kitchen was a dining room that was pretty much central to everything. You kind of had to go through that dining room to get to anywhere else in the house. And off that dining room towards the back was also a 3-season porch that kind of overlooked the backyard and the woods and that sort of thing. And I found myself walking by through the dining room, and as soon as I hit that area, there was an immense calling to get outside. I don't remember how I got outside, but I found myself standing in the driveway, and my cousin was standing out there as well, and she's only a couple months older than I am. And this in itself is just a weird thing. Like, there's no way one of us would have snuck outside without anybody noticing, never mind both of us. But so at any rate, me and my cousin are both standing in the driveway. We don't know why we're out there standing in the driveway, but here we are. And the next thing we know, the woods, the tree line starts right at the back of my grandmother's lawn, start glowing or filling up with this red light. So all you see is this backlit red light and the silhouette of the trees. And the silhouette and this redness kind of rises till eventually this object or craft, whatever you want to call it, breaks the tree line and makes its way over towards us in the driveway. It kind of floats across my grandmother's lawn and parks itself next to this big tree that was at the end of my grandmother's driveway. And it pretty much had a classic I guess what you call saucer shape to it, kind of a dome bottom, dome top. It was probably, my best estimation, 40 feet wide, maybe 20 feet high. And it had this like center row of lights that went around it. And it was like flashing in a pattern, but it didn't seem like flashing like ordinary bulbs like we would have. It seemed more like a fluid thing. The colors just kind of flowed. And it was like a lot of soft whites and, lighter colors. And at some point, it changed in intensity. There were a lot more like orangey red, bright, and the pattern and the speed that it was flashing in got a lot faster and more intense. And when that happened, almost like when you open your car door at night, like and a light comes on in your car in the dark, it was similar to that, like some type of interior light in this object came on. And when that happened, it revealed a row of windows above that center bar. And you couldn't make out like any real details from that light other than you could see shadowy figures that, looked humanoid. You could only really see like shoulders and a head. And it was just shadowy. There was no like real details. And there was just this intense period of feeling like you were being watched, but it was more like not like standing in a grocery store and feel like somebody's staring at you. It'd be more like standing in the woods and feeling like there's an animal, a big animal, like watching you. It was really intense. And then there was a standing blank in my memory. And the next thing I remember, this object was at the other end of the driveway by the road. It kind of hovered above a telephone pole. It sat there for a moment, and then it just shot up into space in the blink of an eye. And that was kind of the catalyst for everything else that has happened in my life.
And how old were you then? 3.5?
3.5-ish, yeah.
Man, I can't remember anything before 12 for some reason. But yeah, I guess if something like that happens, it's going to be like a memory marker. So, and then things kept happening, right? You kept having these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's been quiet for, I should knock on wood, for a month and a half, 2 months now. But
yeah, don't jinx yourself, man.
There's always something happening, yeah.
A month and a half. How old are you now, Mike?
41. Almost 42.
So this stuff has been going on for 40 years, and it's been ongoing. I mean, I read so many stories in the book. There's too many to even mention. So, well, I mean, so give me another couple of examples of some of the encounters you had.
Well, if I can, I'm going to try to catch my breath for a minute. Nomar, why don't you say what your favorite story is or something first? Just give me 2 seconds. Yeah.
Sure. There was kind of, I guess, to go chronologically, and it is one of my favorite encounters, is Mike had a series of ongoing encounters for a 9-month period. And this was when he was a little bit older. I think he was between 7, 8, 9, something like that. And he had he was visited over the course of 9 months, and it happened almost weekly. And when the encounters first started, there were 4 entities that would visit him. It wouldn't always be 4, but in viewing these entities, what he saw is what people in the paranormal field would call shadow people. But they were a little bit different, where within the shadow, there was also some movement, maybe almost like smoke, but black smoke. So it was very, very odd visually. But he also had a perception on top of that of these entities. So with the 4, 2 of them he perceived as male and were militaristic in some sense. And there was another entity that he perceived as female and was much more motherly and teacher-like. And this fourth entity that he would encounter from time to time was a young boy. And during this 9-month encounter, to Mike, it almost seemed like he was being given lessons, like the motherly teacher type entity was teaching him something. He doesn't really remember the in between of the encounters. He kind of more remembers the beginnings and ends of these encounters and not really what these lessons were. But there was a perception and a memory of learning something. And these two military type entities were there to observe and to make sure that Mike got his lessons done, but not in a mean or angry sense, but just that Mike was supposed to be on a schedule and they had to get certain things done by certain times. That was just, vague perceptions that he was having. There was one time where the teacher motherly entity approached Mike one night while he was laying in bed, and she was carrying a small box. And inside that box, she opened it up and presented it to Mike and said, "This is the key." And inside it was this crystal or glass looking arrowhead type object. And to this day, Mike doesn't really have any idea what that means, nor was he given that object at all. He was kind of showed it and, she took it back. There was a funny moment that he had with the boy entity, or I believe they were both sitting on the floor at this point. And Mike, all their communication was telepathic. And Mike had the thought of, like, what are you? What are you to this boy entity? And the boy entity projected the image of Rosie the robot from the Jetsons into Mike's head. And Mike perceived that as the boy entity making some sort of joke. And they kind of shared a happy, funny moment together.
Wow.
But towards the end, or what Mike figured out was the end of their encounters, was this one time the two military entities were there, the motherly entity was there, and Mike saw them visually in a much different way, and quite possibly in their true form. He saw them as actual alien beings, and I believe from his description, they looked like gray aliens, but they were taller, and their skin wasn't gray. It was like brown, olive type color. And the two male entities were about 5 feet tall, and the female was about 4 feet tall, and her skin was a bit smoother than the two males. And he perceived that the two male entities were in a panicked state, an agitated panic state, like something was wrong. And he had this perception that quite possibly a different alien species had tried to abduct Mike. And these alien species that he's been visited by for the past 9 months intercepted that abduction. And quite possibly because the abduction that they intercepted was maybe more nefarious than what they were doing. And it seemed like it might have been a big no-no that they intercepted that abduction. And subsequently, that was the last time those particular entities visited him, from what he can remember. I think I've got most of that down. I don't know if Mike wants to fill in anything, but that's pretty much the gist of that one.
So Mike, you're actually seeing. Is this in your bedroom? When you're like a boy and you're in your bed and you're sitting reading the Hardy Boys or something, and you're having these experiences. You're totally lucid. You're not like having some kind of you're not half asleep or anything, or you don't have a fever. You're actually seeing this wide awake. Hello?
Oh, Yeah, sorry, I rambled on for about 5 minutes before I realized I didn't turn my microphone back on.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so yeah, I did actually was a really huge Hardy Boys reader.
I love that.
But yeah, no, this wasn't like sleeping or half asleep. These are very full, very vivid memories. You know, I've had some other stuff, and we try to make it very clear in the book, like when something's hazy or dreamlike, that's what it was. But yeah, no, this wasn't, and this went on for, like Nomar said, you know, as far as we can figure out, about 9 months. He did mix it up with another little story, and the only thing he messed up was the color. They were more of a softer white, maybe with a blue or purplish hue to them when I actually saw them. Other than that, he got most of the story right.
My bad.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And but yeah, so yeah, no, it was a really, I say interesting. I'm sure to most people, all of it's interesting. That just became a normal after that stretch of time. That this was a really interesting turn of events where it was that I actually saw them. And the part he left out was, well, the couple parts he left out, like when they would visit me at first, I would see balls of light come into my window, and then those balls of light would turn into those shadow figures. But this time, it actually started not in my room. I was looking down from above, at, like, my room. You had to go through the washroom, which, you know, washer, dryer, mudroom type thing to get to. And there was like a back door out there that nobody ever used, had like 2 rickety steps. And I was looking at these steps from, like, I don't know, 20 feet in the air. And I, obvious confusion, why am I looking down at the stairs? And so I kind of turned my head to see what was going on. And I noticed there was blood on this white cloth. So I kind of pulled my head back and realized that this cloth was this robe or garment that this female being was wearing, and she was carrying me back down to the house. I don't remember how we got into the house, but then, you know, the story Nomar just relayed was, you know, fairly accurate. They were acting like they were always one step ahead every time before. Like, they had a plan. They knew it was going to happen next. They were so much in control of the situation. And this time they were just so frantic, and it really seemed like they overstepped their boundaries and did something they weren't supposed to.
That's odd. Now, did you tell your parents about this?
I don't think I did. The first time, I believe I did. There's some confusion with that. Because me and my cousin would always grew up with the story, hey, remember the UFO we saw? And it'd be like, yup, end of story. And even my parents, my aunts, grandmother would be like, oh yeah, those two saw a UFO. End of story. Which is weird, because we grew up in one of these families where, you know, my mom's and her siblings, my aunts, their house was haunted, and everybody knew it, and this sort of thing. And so they'd talk about ghosts all day long in front of us, whatever, but nobody ever talked about UFOs. So they're like, yeah, they saw a UFO, and that was a just kind of a surface conversation, even between me and my cousin. And so I was probably mid-20s, maybe a little bit later. I went and did a regression for that blank that I had from that first encounter when I was 3.5. What happened from when the craft was at, you know, by the tree, to what happened to when it ended up by the driveway. And there was still a lot of fear. It didn't fill in a lot of details. It did fill in some. But so after that, I decided to call my cousin and say, hey, remember that UFO we saw when we were kids? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, I need you to tell me what you remember, and then I'll tell you what I remember. And this is probably something I should mention too. So the house we're living at, where this 9-month encounter happened to be family property and right next door to my grandmother's house where the original encounter happened. Like not across the street, but like the neighboring property. So I call my cousin, I ask her, and she starts telling me this story. As soon as she started telling me, I remembered, but I had forgotten about. We're again at my grandmother's house. She had this big wraparound farmer's porch, and we were looking out towards the property that I then lived in where the 9-month experience happened. And it had this huge backyard, and we watched these red lights come into the sky and like not just move weirdly, like where you go, oh, that's not a plane, but like, no, it really seemed like they were dancing or figure skaters, with this ball of light in the sky, the way it would move, it would make like figure eights, and it was this beautiful thing. And once you started talking about it, I remembered the event, but I remember us being closer to 8 or 9 when that happened. To her, that was the UFO we grew up talking about. So there is some disparity in memories on that.
Now, you guys both know the Saco River, right? That whole thing you can do up the Saco. You can take a boat out and camp on one of the beaches there. You've heard of that, right? Yeah,
I've done it.
Yeah, well, we did it one night. My friend came over to visit me from Ireland, and I mean, we had an extra canoe just for beer. So, I mean, we were pretty drunk, and I don't remember this, but he said that we were sitting there and we had a UFO experience on the Saco River, and I do not remember a damn thing about it. But he said he saw, lights in the sky dancing around. So there's definitely something going on there. Now, does this kind of stuff, like, is it hard to talk about, or is it something that you feel fortunate about? Is it, you know what I mean? Does it scare you, or do you feel fortunate that you've had these experiences?
It's a mix of both. Because of what's happened to me, I'm really happy to talk about it in a general sense and to be, I guess, for lack of a better word, a spokesperson for people who have had these types of experiences. When I can talk about it generally, to talk about it personally, that's, I have people I've known in the field for years who I've done conferences with and this and that. And they're like, we've never heard your story before this. Like, I don't want to tell it. I don't like bringing this up. It's not like, and I think that's what a lot of people who haven't experienced this don't quite understand is it's not like watching a really cool show on TV last night and then you get to stand around the water cooler talking about it the next day. You can't just like tell the story. You have to relive it to tell it. And, there's a lot of emotionally charged aspects about that. And with that, comes a lot of emotional and, it starts playing on your mental stability. And I'm hoping Nomar will jump.
Oh, you cut out there a second.
Oh, and I'm hoping Nomar will kind of jump in here right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Nomar. Nomar might be on mute as well.
Yeah, maybe Nomar.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Boy, we're having a good night tonight, huh, fellas?
Oh, that's fine. That's the way it goes.
So what I was saying while muted was to go back to Mike having difficulty talking about his encounters. Even during our closed-door private interviews, which we had 2 long-form discussions, Mike was visibly shaken. During our conversations, we had to take some breaks. There was some stuff that was hard for him to talk through, and I have always viewed it as a privilege, and will always view it as a privilege to be able to hear something so raw and so genuine. And his story, when it relates to the mental health of an individual, is the exact same as somebody who has suffered PTSD, anxiety or depression type trauma from traumatic domestic events. His symptoms, the struggles that he has on a daily basis are the exact same. He thinks about it a lot, all the time. He doesn't just get to take breaks. It's a part of his life. It's a part of who he is.
So it defines him, in a sense.
Would you say that's true, Mike?
He's on mute again.
So yeah, I don't want to speak for him, whether it defines him or not, but it's just to drive home the point that when somebody is suffering from some mental health issues or from some trauma, you don't just get to take a break from it. It's just with you all the time, whether it's the catalyst is extraterrestrial or domestic violence or being abused sexually or verbally or physically, and it's just something that sits with you.
That's a good point.
And all these apply to the abduction phenomena. But yeah, like the biggest thing I try to let people know is, you're not just an experiencer when you see something in the sky or when it's happening. You have to still live your regular mundane life on top of all this stuff. And, it's been a crazy set of what's allowed sociably to happen. You would never be able to make fun of a rape victim in public, but it's okay to make fun of somebody who claims they've been abducted by aliens when some of it is the exact same, except you can't point out your accuser. You can't get justice. So yeah, Nomar said it very well, and sorry I couldn't find the unmute button.
Well, Mike, I've even had to. I'm sorry to say this, but I've had to unfriend some people, not really good friends, on Facebook because I haven't even had a Bigfoot experience, but I'm really into it, and I believe the people that I interview, and I've met them, and you can just tell sometimes that if people are full of shit or not. And when people start to talk down to me about these people's experiences, I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about, and we can't be friends anymore because you're so close-minded. Now, and Mike, when you probably go to Thanksgiving or, hang out with your friends or something, and they're all talking about the Red Sox or the Patriots, that's fine, but you can't unload about your experiences. I don't know how that plays out in your friendship circle, but that's not something that you can just come out and talk about, which is kind of sad unless you have a niche group of friends. I'm not sure.
For most of my life, yeah, the previous statement was true. I kind of switched gears and became, even before the book was published, became very public, very outspoken, said, look, this happened to me. And I'm on this mission to help anybody I can that has experienced this as well. So I kind of threw myself into the outcast category and said, look, I'll do it myself. You ain't got to make fun of me. I believe in this stuff. I don't care if you do or don't. But this is, I'm not here to argue it. I'm not here to prove it. And I think we do a good job with that with the book. We're not out to prove anything. We're like, look, here's one story. You believe it, you don't. We don't really care. We're not here to argue. But if it touches you in any way, that you relate to it in any way, something like this happened to you, know there's somebody to talk to. And because I've been like this, I've been doing groups like this for several years now. I have kind of, not outgrown the friends I grew up with. They're still friends, but I do have a special niche of friends who are the most supportive people in the world you'd ever meet. Like some of my best friends now, I never would have met if I didn't talk about UFOs or this sort of thing, or Bigfoots, or like some of the people who treat me the best, who care about me the most, are people I've only met because I've been outspoken about these topics.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
To answer your question, it's really a mix of both.
Now, why you, Mike? Why do you think? I mean, you've got me here, who hasn't experienced anything at all, but I believe you, and I believe most of my Bigfoot people that I've spoken to. But why do you think that you have these experiences? Is there something in your family? Do you have or are you just more open? I don't understand that part. I mean, why is it bestowed upon one person and?
I personally, why has it happened to me? I couldn't give you an answer. But you did mention the family. I do believe we have a family history of these things. And so I do believe that these type of scenarios run through bloodlines and generations. Why that family or generation has been chosen, I couldn't answer that at all.
That's the kicker, right? That's a question that really baffles me is like I've interviewed a lot of people, and certain people have some kind of family history of, their mother. Well, Crystal Panic, who got me in contact with you guys, I think her mother saw Bigfoot, and then her daughter saw Bigfoot, independent of her own experiences, if I'm remembering that correctly. I know her daughter definitely saw something. So there's definitely maybe something, I don't know. I mean, I'm just taking a wild guess, but there's definitely something.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if some of it is just purely genetic, or if some of it you've grown up in a family where you're open to an experience where you can't have it if you're not open to it. And yes, thank you, Crystal, for connecting us. She's a wonderful person on her own,
awesome.
But a great researcher as well. So.
Yes, I wanted to give a shout out to her as well.
Well, she got me started in this whole Bigfoot thing because when I started my podcast, it was just going to be like a poor man's Joe Rogan. I was just going to interview everybody about all their different experiences. Military vets, police officers, Bigfoot experiencers, and then I had an interview with her, and I was hooked automatically after speaking to her. So I'm like, I just want to talk about Bigfoot and aliens. This is great.
Yeah.
But now, Mike, you must now go. I just want to bring this up about the. You must feel some sense of vindication with the latest revelations. Obviously from the Tic Tac UFO and all that kind of stuff. But this recent update from what's his name, Haim Ashid, is that how you pronounce it? The professor of aeronautics and astronautics from Israel. He came out and just dropped a bombshell on us the other day, and he said that we have contact with the Galactic Federation and they're allowed to experiment on us. I'm just paraphrasing, but have you heard that story?
I have, and it's interesting because I don't know. It's trying to me. I look at more the timing. Why are they saying it? Not so much what are they saying. Because as far as disclosure from government agencies, I don't believe in it. That'd be me me coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I believe in pencils."
Huh.
There's no need for me to say that. We all have used the pencil. We all know pencils exist. I, as an experiencer, and everybody I deal with who's an experiencer, we already know this. We don't need somebody in any official position to tell us this. So when somebody in an official position starts saying this, maybe I'm a little jaded, maybe I'm a little conspiracy minded. I want to know, why they're saying it now. What's pushed them to this reasoning where they've been quiet for so long?
Okay.
It doesn't make it true or untrue. It's just that's where my mind
you don't
goes.
need vindication, basically.
No, and I don't think most general people do, but the general population might.
Well, do you think that maybe it's because they want to kind of let it out in stages to get us used to it? Something you already know and the rest of us don't?
Yeah, I believe in that. And then, the odd part of me is like, if you're like, the government's lying, I don't believe them, which you have to kind of believe in to believe in a conspiracy. And then when they say what you want to hear, it doesn't make sense to suddenly believe in somebody who you think is a liar because they're saying what you want to hear. So
very well put.
Right.
So it's a weird middle ground. Like, yeah, I wish every world leader would say it, but does that make me believe them anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I've always had a problem with figures of authority, if you will.
Yeah.
And also, I've never been a big fan of the mainstream media. I think a lot of stuff is fed and spun a certain way. And just because now, or starting in 2017, with the Tic Tac stuff, just because the mainstream media is actually reporting something that I'm interested in and that I have a belief in, it doesn't mean I'm going to start believing and listening to that source. I'd rather listen to people like Mike and all the other experiencers that I've talked to, and it goes back to Mike's pencil theory, if you will.
I like the pencil theory.
Yeah, because those people know it exists. So, there's no convincing. It's about the person and their story and how it affected them and the aftermath and hopefully helping somebody else.
Well, it's like the Bigfoot theory. You've got knowers and you've got believers. The knower is the person that saw it.
Sure.
And they know. I mean, there's just no no doubt about it. And then you have believers like me that kind of believe it,
Yeah, and someone like me, anyways, is I'm somebody that wants to believe, even though I believe Mike and believe a lot of the stories of people that I interview. I'm not a 100% believer in everything that I hear. I think it's really important to come at it from a rational level, and the way I kind of break it down is with all the people that I talk to, I'd say there's about 75% of the people I believe that they believe what happened, and that's good enough for me. I'd say another 15% of those people, of that 100%, I don't believe them at all. And I'm very kind. I listen to them, but I just kind of walk away after that. And then there's 10%, which Mike is included in, where I don't know what to think, but it sounds believable to me. And he had an extraterrestrial encounter, or has had numerous extraterrestrial encounters,
Now, Nomar, regarding your own experiences, have you had your own experiences, or are you just like me with Bigfoot and you just are very interested?
No, I've definitely have had my own experiences. Certainly nothing as intense as the majority of people that I've talked to. I've seen some very strange lights in the sky on 11 different occasions, and I've seen a weird creature, and I've had some experiences with ghosts.
Now, let's get to this, the whole orbs thing. And you mentioned this earlier, Mike, about the orbs. Well, you called it balls of light. But these things have been reported, in conjunction with UFOs and Bigfoot. And I think in your documentary, Nomar, with Otherworldly Amor, they talk, that couple, I don't remember their names right now.
Shauna and Josh.
Yeah, I loved that documentary.
Thanks, man.
And you guys are sitting around the campfire at some stage, and I think they live on a property that backs up to the woods, if I'm correct.
That's right. Yeah.
And they saw orbs there, if I remember right.
Yeah, they have seen that on occasion. Then that particular night when we did when I was doing a shoot there, we actually didn't see anything in the woods with our eyes, but upon examining the photographic evidence, we did find a couple different anomalies. But we were hearing stuff with our ears. We were hearing some sort of human-like talking from deep within the woods, and it was unsettling but exciting, at the same time. But going back to balls of light, balls of light have been reported in all areas of the paranormal, with hauntings, with Bigfoot, with dogmen, with black-eyed children, obviously with UFOs. And I think, not to speak for Mike, but we're both proponents that all of this stuff is probably connected in some way. And even if we're wrong and it's not connected, I think it's important for researchers and people that help people with this stuff to not look at something through such a narrow lens, because you might be cutting yourself off from important information or from some people that you should be talking to. So if you can look at it while you're standing under an umbrella instead of looking through binoculars, I think you might be better equipped to kind of take in everything that you can. And there's, just because you saw a Bigfoot, that it resides solely in cryptozoology. Is there an otherworldly tinge to Bigfoot? And if somebody sees some sort of ghost figure of some sort, does that necessarily mean that is an actual dead person, or is there some sort of weird string theory, time thing that's happening? Where all of this stuff could be connected. So, I guess short and simple, it's just good to have a broader sense of what's happening as opposed to a narrow view.
Well, the balls of light or orbs seem to connect everything together. For me, being an outsider and just looking at this, it seems that these things seem to occur in all kinds of cryptozoology, hauntings, alien activity, which is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done my fair share of years of paranormal investigating, plus I'm an experiencer. And, photographic evidence, you have a picture of I'll put it in quotes, orb. Yeah, sometimes it could be dust, sometimes it could be bugs.
Yeah.
I've seen, not, on a camera with my own naked eye, glowing, balls of light that shouldn't be there. So do I believe in orbs? Absolutely. Am I the person to take your picture to because you think I'm going to tell you it was a ghost or your grandma? No, because I can't tell that from a still photo. Still photography is the worst piece of evidence we will ever have, especially for that sort of thing. But
Dave Wilbanks and I were walking. I was just down in the Comanche Mountains in Oklahoma a month ago, start of October, and we were walking down the trail. And we had our cameras on. I had a GoPro and the iPhone. We were looking for stuff. But I'm like, if you were just walking down a trail and something ran across the trail in front of you in a split second, there is absolutely no way you're going to get your phone out and take a picture.
Yeah.
And catalog it. I mean, so people say, why aren't there photographs of these things? Regarding Bigfoot. I mean.
Well, first of all, there are. It's just people don't want to accept them.
That's true, too.
Well, and the other is the human experience. So as far as UFOs, I've gone out purposely looking for them with a group of people, tried to call them in a weird C5 type thing. Not necessarily Greer's method. On top of a mountain, we had something come in, and there were 4 of us there. 3 of us were seasoned paranormal investigators. The 4th was my daughter. And we were just so engaged in the moment. Not one of us thought to pull out a phone I got to get this on evidence. I got to do this.
Yeah.
And that's the thing people forget. It's when you're actually in the situation, you're in the moment. That it's like asking people, why didn't you get a picture of the deer you hit?
Right.
Right.
You know, because you're not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hit a deer and you snap a picture. No, you're in the moment.
Yeah, you're just a human in that moment. Like, I've been researching and investigating this stuff for years, and during some of my investigations where I had gear on hand with me, I was just a dumb human idiot in the moment, and I was just jaw dropped at what I was looking at. And then I got a little bit of wherewithal, and I captured a couple of things on my cell phone, but I had, night vision camera gear and stuff with me, and I was just in the moment. It's hard to react. It's hard to have that, hard investigator hat on. And I think people that maybe criticize what Mike and I are talking about right now is they haven't been in that moment. We're talking about the skeptic or someone who hasn't seen anything yet. When you're in that moment, that's when you'll know. And we can't do anything. We can't argue it with anyone to have them understand that. They just have to experience it.
Well, like when I was on that same trip in Oklahoma, we woke up one morning and we heard this shrill, like whistling sound. And Dave, who's a seasoned investigator, he lives down there. And I was like, Dave. And I could hear this sound through my tent. And he was sleeping. And I'm like, Dave, wake up. And he's like, what? I'm like, hear that? And this, you're talking like 20 seconds. And then he wakes up and he's like, what the hell is that? I'm like, I don't know. And then it started getting answered from across the valley. And he's like, that's no bird that I've ever heard. And he's been out in the woods all his life. He's been coming to this particular area for 20 years. And we're listening to it. And he's like, that's... And I forgot. I didn't even think to get I had 3 different recording devices with me. I didn't think to get one out and start recording because I thought it was a bird or something.
You're just excited too, You're like, whoa! You're just experiencing it,
Yeah. So, Mike, you're part of a paranormal investigation team, also. He's on mute.
Yeah, I have been. I recently, doing it and doing it right takes a lot of time. People don't realize that if you're on a 5-hour, investigation, that's 5 hours for every piece of equipment. That's 5 hours of video. That's 5 hours per recorder. So I don't mind doing it, but so many paranormal groups want to do it to be like, hey, this place is famous. We want people to know we were there.
Right.
So I kind of gave that up. If there's a family involved, or especially children, they're like, we think this place is haunted. We can't move. We don't have the funds to move. We don't know what to do. I'm there. I'm on that investigation. But, I just kind of gave up on doing the investigation for, fame and fortune type cases, or not that there's any money in it, but
it's a pain in the balls, basically.
Yeah, it is. I don't care, but I only care if it means something to me. I don't want to do it just to do it. I've seen enough that I believe in this stuff. I don't need to do it to prove to myself. And my heart and soul is with the abduction experiencers. So I'd rather put my time into those cases.
Now, do you want to talk about your website, Granite? And I messed this up first time around, but it's granitesky.org, right?
Yes, and it's pretty simple website because it's pretty simple concept. If anybody has had any type of what they think is extraterrestrial UFO contact, whether and contact's a weird word, because some of the people I deal with have had multiple contact experiences like myself. And so for people like that, seeing a weird light in the sky doesn't mean that much to them anymore. But to somebody who hasn't had that type of experience, they could still have that one weird light in the sky experience where they know it's not a plane, they know it's not humanly, and it still changes their whole worldview. So we try to bridge that gap where we are for anybody struggling with coping with any type of extraterrestrial phenomena contact. And it's not just, we don't just deal with people who have negative contact experiences. We also deal with people who have had just positive experiences with them. And I really, we do separate things for people who are more comfortable with that. But our heart and soul is group meetings that are a mix of both, because then it's not to promote arguments, but to let everybody see both sides of the picture and to really not argue, maybe not even agree, but to try to understand each side of it.
Okay, so you actually have meetings through your website. I mean, you have people come and you have like a circle of people talking about their experiences?
Yeah, before COVID, we would meet once a week and we'd have a different flavor, like kind of aim the meeting a different way each week. One would be for anybody just interested in the topic, talk about anything about, like, say, the recent, Israel guy talking about that. You could bring that up even if you've never seen anything. We'd have meetings especially for people who had encounters. We'd have meetings for people we'd have meditations. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Stars actually make sound. So we have a track of different star recordings and we meditate to that and just kind of see what people picked up. And like, we try to explore it across the board in as many ways as we can, because we don't know what's going on, but we want to explore it in in as many different ways as we can.
Yeah, it's a great place for, like, I guess you got to be local and stuff to do these kind of things. But I'm guessing these things are, there's different websites for people all over the country to come together and talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they are and there aren't. That's just that's why I like personally doing things in person, because you can get a feel for somebody, especially the people who have been before, even people I haven't met. That, everybody's like, especially on the first time you meet somebody, like, oh, how are you? And their instant answer is, oh, good, because that's what you're conditioned to say.
Yeah.
But when you have somebody in person, you can read body language, you go, that is far from the truth,
Yeah.
And you know how to work with them from that point. So I've tried to stay away from the virtual meetings that everything has gone to now, and this and that. We've obviously cut back. We can't do once a week. We're trying to do at least once a month. Now the weather's up here in New England is starting to bout with us with that too. So, but we'll always find a way. But yeah, definitely, if you're local, you're better. We can definitely easily more get in touch. But I mean, if you're across country too, and you just need somebody to talk to me, yeah, email me or hit the website up, and yeah, I'm definitely willing to talk to anybody.
Nomar, what are your now you've done a couple of books, the Andreas Affair, which is Bill and Barney Hill, right? That's Betty and Barney Hill. That's the Andreas Affair, right? And that's your book.
No, and those two cases are not related either. But Betty Barney Hill and the Intrusion. But I have a couple of other books out. One is called UFOs over Maine, and another one is Otherworldly Encounters.
Right.
And this being my third book, Granite Skies.
Now, and what's your what projects are you working at on right now? Are you still writing books and?
Yeah. I got a bunch of stuff going on. The fourth season of my podcast, it's called I Want to Believe. That starts January 15th next month. And in that podcast, it's a short form podcast where I relate paranormal stories. So there's podcasts about black-eyed kids, UFOs, ghosts, so a bunch of stuff that I cover on that. I'm also working on a new book to come out for next year, and it's going to be my first publicly published book of horror fiction, and I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome. I didn't know you had a podcast. That's great to know, because I'm always looking for different podcasts on the subject.
Cool. I'll have to send you the link. It's it's short form, easily digestible, and I typically have a co-host, but due to COVID this year, he was unable to join me, so it's just me this year. So it's not as fun or funny, if you will, but the stories are always compelling, in my opinion. There's even one about a vampire this year in Wisconsin, which is really interesting. There's also an episode about the Veronica movie that's on Netflix. That movie is based on a true story about this woman who passed away back in 1991 through possibly supernatural means, and the police actually got involved. And it's one of the, I believe it's the first case that publicly has a police report referencing paranormal phenomenon in their police report. It's fascinating.
Wow, the Veronica report.
Well, the movie is called Veronica. It's on Netflix, and it's based on a true story.
Oh, that's awesome. That's like the guy from New York. He was a police officer, and he...
Oh, yeah.
You know, that guy... What was the... He became a demonologist, and he came out with all of this stuff of all the experiences that he had as a police officer, as an NYPD police officer, and it was a very famous book. I can't remember the name of it now. I can't either. I think the word evil is in it, but at least the movie that I saw based on him was pretty good. I think it starred Eric Bana, who was also the one of the original Incredible Hulks. Yeah, that's right. He was. He's English, I think. Now, is this your full-time job, Nomar, or do you have other stuff going on?
No, this is what I do full time, and been doing it full time for a few years now. It's always had to, because of how the world works with bills and all that stuff. It's always been relegated to a hobby, but I was forced out of corporate America due to downsizing, and that happened in 2017, I believe, and it really forced my hand, but it didn't have to twist too hard to allow me to pursue this full time. And I also got really good at downsizing my own life and how I live, so I can manage on not the most funds made from the type of work that I do. So there's been a lot of adjusting for the first couple of years, but I kind of have it down to a science right now, and I don't know how long in the foreseeable future it can run, but if I can keep being a content creator and putting out projects that I'm passionate about, that's a really important part of it. Is I'm not going to do it if I'm not passionate about it. I'm a whore. I'll write about whatever.
That's a dream job, though.
But I'll literally write about anything. I just have to feel passionate about it, or I'll record something. I just need to feel passionate about it, and so far that I've never run out of that, and I don't see myself running out of that. So I hope to continue on as long as I can.
And what about you, Mike? What are you doing these days? Or
so what was it, about a year and a half ago, I was basically a laborer for most of my life, factory jobs, physical labor.
Me too.
And I said, no, I'm gonna, I was already into the stuff, so it was becoming a hassle between me and my boss. Like he was good about it, but like I had to always be like, hey, I got an interview this day, I can't do this, or I can meet you on the job, but I got to be an hour and a half late, or this or that, like just because the UFO stuff like had become first to me. And then I finally stepped away from it, and I said, no, like there's not a way to make a living, but I'll find a way to survive. But my passion is doing this, and so a bunch of stuff happened. The center we had talked about earlier, how me and Nomar met, had closed, and it was this huge shift in life. And I said, all right, I'm really passionate about helping people who have had UFO experiences. I'm going to do this full time. Like, I might not live well, but I'll live. And then, so that all was at about December. Well, I quit my full-time job maybe 6 months prior. Then, 5 months later, the center closed down. I got a new spot through a friend who I knew. She's like, yeah, you can use this space. It's just sitting here empty. Like, everything was like, yeah, destiny's on my side. Like, I'm supposed to do this. And then COVID hit, and like, yeah, trying to sustain yourself through group meetings this is the worst year possible to do this. Yeah. So I don't live well, but I'm alive, and I'm happy with the work I do. And I really can't say much more than that.
That's inspiring, to be honest. I mean, God, wouldn't we all love to follow our passions and do stuff like you guys do? It's amazing. So
appreciate it, man. And it's what Mike was saying. It's it's a tough road, and it's we're
nobody wants to live like this, but I wouldn't want to live any other way. Like, it's a real complex.
Yeah, like if anybody asked me advice, should I do this? Should I pursue this for full time? Blah blah blah. Like, no, absolutely not. Do anything else, because Mike and I have fun with the work we do, and that might be the only fun we have, and that's not to, speak disparagingly about my life or Mike's life, but there's a lot of truth in that, or that is the truth. It's a hard life, and we're doing the best we can.
Well, hopefully, you can read more about Mike's stories in your book, Nomar. Otherworldly Amor. I keep getting that wrong.
No, that's all right. That's the documentary. The book with Mike is the book
Granite
with Mike, or you're right, Granite Skies, and people can check out my work at allmylinks.com/Slevik. But if you can't remember that, just Google Granite Skies, and it'll take you right to the book.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, guys, it was awesome to have you on. Thank God we could figure this all out with my last minute cancellation of my Bigfoot expedition because of the weather. So it worked out, and
it did.
Hey, we only pretend we're professional. You fit right in with us, so don't worry.
Yeah, hopefully I'll get up there someday, and meet you guys in person.
No, well, yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, thank you very much for coming on, and God bless.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right, talk to you guys soon.
Sounds
Take care.
Good. Love you, man.
All right, bye now.